Wednesday, February 20. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. The House of Representatives last night approved a bill giving the government the right to compulsory recovery of Venezuela's 49% share in Jamaica's only oil refinery, Petrojam. Government members of Parliament voted to approve the bill, the Compulsory Acquisition Shares in Petrojam Limited Act 2019, which provides for the acquisition and ownership of the property to be vested in the Accountant General in trust for the government, and for compensation to be paid to Venezuela. The vote followed a passionate and sometimes partisan 5-hour debate.
We did it, as I said, with U.S. Rosal, and I would hope that it is not just because Russia is a mighty power, and we were prepared to benefit from their protests and whatever affinities and connections they might have in the United States, but that because we perceive Venezuela to be less well connected, we are prepared not to stand on the same principle.
So, Mr. Speaker, there's a point of order.
One side wants to be able to listen. This is a sign of weakness. You can't listen. Sign of weakness. Mr. Speaker, I beg your indulgence to allow me to speak. The point of order, Mr. Speaker, is that the member is confusing the nature of the sanctions on UC Rosal, on Derek Pascal, with the sanctions against PDVSA and the effect of those sanctions. The sanctions against UC Rosal never affected our banking system. The sanctions against Derek Pascal never affected any private bank operated in Jamaica. The sanctions against UC Rosal never resulted in payments from Jamaica being interrupted by foreign banks. The member is deliberately confusing and misleading this House, and by extension, the people of Jamaica. They're apples and oranges, apples and oranges.
Prime Minister Holness, who piloted the bill in the House, would only offer to give Venezuela until it reaches the floor of the Senate for final approval on a mutual agreement. He said it was time for the country to act decisively on the refinery.
If the government were to decide to keep the inefficient operations going, then what it would translate into, Mr. Speaker, would be higher prices for fuel, or if the government doesn't want to expose the consumer to higher prices, it would have to subsidize. Inevitably, subsidies or tax breaks would mean that the taxpayers would have to pay more taxes. So whichever way you cut it, keeping an inefficient refinery will cost the taxpayers of Jamaica more. In effect, Mr. Speaker, that is what we mean when we say, if you don't make an investment in the refinery to upgrade its capacity, its technology, or if you don't do something to divest it or change the nature of its operation, Petrojam, in its current state, will become a fiscal risk to the government. In effect, it will become a call on the consumers of Jamaica's pockets.
In agreement with the Prime Minister, Minister of Finance and Public Service, Dr. Nigel Clark, insisted that the decision was purely an economic one.
It's not about politics. It is not about ideology, though it comes at a time when politics is in the air regarding Venezuela. It's not about politics. It's not motivated by political nor ideological goals. This bill, Mr. Speaker, that we debate today rises purely out of the economic interest of Jamaica, and Jamaica's economic interest in this matter is abundantly clear.
However, the opposition rejected the idea. Closing the debate, Prime Minister Holness said that it should be realized that the government was unable to make any major decision on the future of the refinery without Maduro's consent. In a related story, newly appointed Energy Minister Favour Williams says the market value of Jamaica's sole oil refinery, Petrojam, has dropped by nearly $100 million in the past 12 years.
The joint venture destroyed value, significant value. The international firm, Standstill, that had estimated Petrojam to be worth approximately US $126 million in 2006, was called on again to do a valuation of Petrojam in 2018. Using the same globally accepted valuation methodology, the income approach, Standstill assessed the fair market value of Petrojam, as is case, to be US $34 million.
No.
That means 49% of Petrojam is worth US $16.7 million, significantly less.
Williams said the 2018 valuation came at $34 million because necessary upgrade to position the refinery for other markets has still not been undertaken. But Central Manchester Member of Parliament Peter Bunting presented a 2017 assessment by the same firm. In that assessment, Petrojam was valued at $170 million. Prime Minister Andrew Holness confirmed that a valuation was conducted in 2017, but it was to secure a $100 million loan for upgrading Petrojam's vacuum distillation unit.
Members of the opposition seem to believe that Petrojam should pay the highest possible price for the shares rather than batting for strong negotiation on behalf of the Jamaican people. The opposition should be aware of the reality that the value of the refinery would have reduced over time without any investment, that its economic prospects are less certain, and that significant investment will be needed if it is to continue to operate as a refinery. How then could a member of the opposition be saying that the government should pay more than what it offered? How then? Well, that member will have an opportunity to explain why it is that within a negotiation, the people's loyal opposition is batting for another country, asking the people's loyal government to pay more.
He said that might have been the reason Venezuela was demanding multiple times the figure the government had proposed as the purchase price for the 49% stake in the refinery. Alanda Terrelong is to assume additional portfolio responsibilities in his new post as State Minister in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information. Chief among his duties will be oversight of the Safety and Security in Schools initiative. His expanded role in the ministry will also include the digital switchover and the Broadcasting Commission. That's according to Education Minister Senator Ruel Reid. Terrelong's other portfolio responsibilities include the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, National Parenting Support Commission, Children's Homes, Youth Programs, Youth Policy, the National Youth Advisory Council, Youth Clubs, the Youth Parliament, Youth Month, and the Ministry's Values and Attitude Program. Terrelong, the former junior minister in the Ministry of Culture Gender, Entertainment and Sport was last week reassigned by Prime Minister Andrew Holness. He replaces Floyd Green, who has been redeployed as State Minister to the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport. 5 persons have been killed in August Town, St. Andrews since the start of the year. In the wake of the worsening crime situation in August Town, Member of Parliament for the area, Fayval Williams, has renewed her call for a zone of special operations to be declared in the community. The latest flare-up in violence occurred Tuesday morning when a house and a shop were firebombed by warring factions. A heavy police presence is now in the area. Mrs. Williams said Augustown residents are fearful and are requesting the special security measure. In the same breath, she commended the security forces for their crime-fighting efforts. Recently ousted Police Federation chairman has launched a legal challenge to her dismissal, a move that has taken the Federation by surprise. The vocal police corporal, who was the first woman to be elected as a chairman, and her attorney Hugh Wildman on Monday brought an ex parte notice for application for a mandatory injunction in the Supreme Court, which seeks to have the corporal reinstated as chairman of the police union, which represents the rank and file of the Jamaica Constabulary Force. In the affidavit, which lists the newly elected chairman, Inspector Sheldon Gordon, newly elected General Secretary, Sergeant Petrojam, and the Police Federation as first, second, and third respondents respectively, Corporal McBean alleged that she was unconstitutionally removed from her post in January. Sergeant Rowe yesterday rubbished the claim that McBean had been illegally removed from her position, but insisted that she was duly removed from her position as chairman after the executive lost confidence in her leadership. According to Wildman, a date is set this week for the court to hear arguments. The house in Chelsea, where Bob Marley lived for a year in 1977 while his band, the Wailers, finished their Exodus album, is to get a blue commemorative plaque from English Heritage. It was during his time in London that he referred to the city as his second base, and he and his bandmates often played football at the nearby Battersea Park. The Blue Plaques panel called Marley a cultural icon who blazed the trail for other black artists. A blue plaque is a permanent sign installed in a public place to commemorate a link between that location and a famous person, event, or former building on the site, serving as a historical marker. In regional news, Guyana's Election Commission, GCOM, has spoken. On Tuesday, 2 motions put before the 7-member election body were passed, paving the way for President David Granger to be informed that elections could not be held within the constitutionally due 90 days for having lost the no-confidence motion late last year. GCOM moved that the March 21 date for the election could not be met, nor are there funds to hold it. The move did not go well with the opposition-appointed members of the commission, including PBCJ, who said that money can be found for the polls.
We don't have to ask them to appropriate money, but of course they are understanding. They refuse to believe that the money that is appropriated can be prioritized by GCOM to do it. So that is, a song that is being sung at the other side all the time. And that they needed to inform the president that they can't hold these elections. Well, I said I'm not party to that because I've always believed that GCOM should be ready to hold elections whenever elections are called.
In the meantime, the opposition People's Progressive Party, the PPP, has accused GCOM of colluding with the government to delay the polls. Speaking after the vote, opposition-appointed member John Raj says GCOM did not have the power to decide that elections be delayed.
The natural consequences that flow from the passage of the no-confidence motion is not within the bailiwick of the Guyana Elections Commission or the courts or anywhere else. It is born out of the Constitution, which gives rise to the very courts, which gives rise to the very Guyana Elections Commission, which gives effect to the funding, etc., and the mandate of the Guyana Elections Commission. It is not for us or for the courts to say, look, we are suspending the provisions of the Constitution. They can't. And similarly, it is not within the ambit of GCOM to so do, because it is our duty to prepare for elections, whenever they are called.
In Trinidad and Tobago, more than 100 former workers of state-owned refinery Petrojam staged a protest. We have more in this report.
Months after Petrojam was restructured and workers sent home, over 100 former employees are still waiting on money. Speaking to the media just after filing his complaint at the San Fernando Industrial Court, one former worker said they are due money ranging from pensions to basic pay, and according to the former workers, the time has passed.
Under the law, which is the Retrenchment and Severance Benefit Act, once you send workers home, there's a technicality that says the company have 30 days to pay people their monies. It is now 80 days, and all that's happened as citizens of this country and workers, we have written the registrar of the court complaining.
He said, contrary to popular belief, some workers have not been paid and are still waiting on what is due to them.
Based on our little knowledge, the court will contact the former company. The company is traded now as the Trinidad and Tobago Petroleum Holding Company Limited, and there's a section called Petrojam Legacy. So I hope that the court contacts them and asks them to listen, contact your workers or whoever, and see if you could fix this.
He said as time unfolds, other issues will come to light.
In sports, CONCACAF has sought to clear the air regarding the future of their premier tournament, the Gold Cup, by noting in a statement on Tuesday that the Confederation was committed to the 2019, 2021, and 2023 editions as part of the FIFA calendar. Additionally, they noted that once the new FIFA calendar is produced after 2023, CONCACAF would continue organizing the pinnacle event for the Confederation. On Monday, President of U.S. Soccer Federation Carlos Cordero said in a quote from Yahoo Sports, quote, "The Gold Cup was only legislated for this year and 2021, so it could go on, but it may not happen," end quote. Cordero said that the FIFA Confederations Cup would not be played again, and the reverberations could be felt in the biennial CONCACAF Gold Cup. That's the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom. Pleasant viewing.